Now, there's a new report in the Daily Beast that shows what Trump is truly afraid of when it comes to 2020. Uh, so now, Republicans have been running on the idea that giving people guaranteed health care through a cheaper single payer government run insurance system through Medicare is basically Soviet style communism. And that student loan debt relief, for example, or forgiveness is evil socialism. And we do that, we're going to be eating rats like Venezuela. So now, those policies actually are fairly popular with young people who are now set to become the largest voting bloc in the country. Now, that same voting bloc happens to favor Senator Bernie Sanders and these policies by a very large margin. And that apparently has Trump and the administration incredibly nervous. Now, this is according to the Daily Beast. While in public, the Republicans, again, they trash socialism and say socialism will never happen in this country, ever. But in private, the president's saying, actually, it might, because it's kind of a good message. Um, Now, let me give this quote here from the article. In private, the president strikes a different, more nuanced tone, which is amazing considering how it's President Trump here. One driven by a concern that socialism, at least as defined by Democrats, may actually sell politically. Now, let me stop there, right? So that's important. Socialism, at least as defined by Democrats, right? Mainly defined by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, right? So now Bernie Sanders, he calls himself Democratic Socialist. He's actually a social democrat. Now, Elizabeth Warren's capitalist to her bones, right? But even she is promoting social democratic ideas in the form of at least eliminating student debt up to a certain percentage. And we've gone over those policies. And on these policies, Bernie Sanders is unapologetically the most progressive candidate, 100%. So now, social democracy, as I said before, or what is democratic socialism of Bernie Sanders, is not the complete nationalization or takeover of the entire economy. That is not what we're talking about. No, we're talking about European style Nordic social democracy, where there are some industries that are nationalized and a very generous welfare program, but there's also very competitive capitalism as well. It is a mixed market system and actually has led to incredible results. And look, we even used to have a much more robust mixed market economy here in the United States. Now it leans much more favorably towards the corporations and the incredibly wealthy. So now, again, social democracy, right? Now, some of the things that they've talked about, nationalization, right, is possibly the energy production sector when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the Green New Deal. Not only that, but also the nationalization of health insurance, not health care, which was more of the UK model, but health insurance, and basically what is a Medicare program expended to everybody, right? So now that I have those definitions out there and an explanation, let me go to more of the article. This year, Trump has repeatedly told friends and donors that running against, quote, socialism in a general election may not be so easy because of its populist draw, according to 4 Republicans and sources close to Trump who've heard him say this over the past several months. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, that is the direct opposite of what establishment Democrats, Third Way, the DLC are all talking about. They're like, no, you can't run to socialism. You're going to get destroyed by Republicans in a general election. Are we? Now, here's Trump saying, no, I'm really worried about this. If they run a populist progressive campaign based on these ideas of forgiving student loan debt and doing national health insurance, which, by the way, Trump, when he was running, he ran as a pseudo-populist, and he talked about our health insurance. It's going to be so great. Nobody's going to die on the street. Everybody's going to have insurance, and it's going to be cheaper. What he was doing is he even gave credit to, I think it was Ireland's single payer system. I don't know if it was Ireland or Australia. It could have been both. But he said, look, you people in Australia, you have better health care than we do. Australia has ironically, it's called Medicare for all there too. So, or it's a Medicare for all system there. So, yeah, he's worried. Now, you might also be thinking, wait a minute here. Trump actually is making sense on this. Oh, look, Trump's a stupid guy. He's a dumb person. But he understands how to run a populist campaign. How do you do that? You just tell people what they want to hear or what you think they want to hear. See, one of the things, and I cannot believe that the media has not caught on to this, right? They still haven't caught on to this. It turns out that when you tell people what they like to hear, they generally like it. I don't understand how nobody picks up on this. Media, the Democratic Party, etc. Right? But what they also miss is that throughout his campaign, he would basically A/B test the audience. He would say something, and if it doesn't get applause, he'd drop it, right? But if he says something else, and it gets a massive applause line, like a lot of the racist stuff, because he's talking to a Republican audience, that went really well, and he decided to keep it. Let me give you an example. Drain the swamp, right? Drain the swamp. So he started saying, oh, let's drain the swamp. And then in interviews afterwards, he's like, well, it played well. He's like, I thought it was a little goofy, a little hokey, but it played really well. So I just kept saying it. Because it was super popular. It turns out people don't like the corruption inside of Washington. Even Republicans don't like the corruption inside of Washington. They actually like representatives that represent them. And they don't like, and I know, at least at the local level, Republican politicians, it's a loss at the national level, complete waste, right? Every one of those Republicans essentially is corrupt. But you get to the state and local level, a lot of these Republican politicians, even if I don't agree with them on a lot of policy or most policy, we both agree that we don't like wealthy billionaires from out of state coming in and buying the elections. And you ask local Republicans, hey, would you like to have someone from California or New York or whatever state come in and buy your elections? And they say, hell no. And that's why groups like Wolfpack have actually had some decent success in a lot of these smaller states, even with Republican legislatures. They don't like people buying off their government either. I know, right? Crazy. So look, again, Donald Trump is actually right about this. Which, again, amazing, right? He understands that people like populism, which is, again, amazing to me that nobody else seems to get it. Now, of course, he phrases populism in a different way, at least when it comes to stuff that Bernie Sanders is talking about. And he says it's free stuff, right? And that's, of course, a Republican narrative. He says, well, who doesn't like free stuff? I like free stuff. According to a person who was in the room, Trump had told donors at a recent private event that though a lot of people think it'll be easy to beat in 2020, socialism, right? The truth is it might not be easy. The president, according to the source, said that you can have someone who loves Trump, but many people love free stuff too. He added that if candidates tell Americans, especially young voters, that they're going to cancel their debt, that's a tough one to run against. Now, what does Trump know the most? Debt. Why? Because he's always in debt. He literally called himself the king of debt. He's like, I borrow lots of money, I take on lots of debt, and then I go bankrupt. Ha suckers. Taxpayers. Businesses and banks that loan me money. You should have never trusted me because I'm the king of debt. So he knows that. And so he thinks, man, I would love it if somebody canceled my debt. In fact, I've done it 6 times. I've had my debt canceled and wiped out through bankruptcy. So yeah, I get it. So if I tell them that I'm going to cancel your debt, Well, they're going to be about as happy as I am when the government cancels mine. And by the way, student loan debt is the only debt that cannot be wiped out through bankruptcy proceedings. So Donald Trump can wipe his debt all day, right? 6 times. But the student that took out $100,000 in debt and still couldn't find a job in his field, or even worse, went to a predatory for-profit institution, they can't have their debt wiped through bankruptcy. But Trump can. So he looks at that and he says, oh boy, Bernie Sanders wants to cancel $1.6 trillion of student loan debt. And I doubt he could recite the number. Boy, that's tantalizing. I'd take that deal. Well, of course. Who wouldn't want to take that deal? And I know that there are actually some people that are like, no, I would definitely not take that deal. Yeah, okay. I respectfully disagree with you on that one. But anyway, yeah. Now, again, debt cancellation for college, especially predatory colleges, right? For-profit universities, is incredibly popular among young people. Now, the other thing is, again, I want to push back against the free stuff thing, right? No. It's not free stuff. It's actually paying for things that benefit society. It's your taxes actually going to help you instead of going to rich people and corporations in the forms of giant subsidies like what we give to the oil companies, right? So now, so one of Trump's allies, right, Eric Bolling, had said he talked to Trump about this, right? And he said, I discussed the popularity of the Democratic Socialist message, i.e. Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's capitalist to her bones, let's be honest. That's a quote from her. She's someone who more wants to keep the general system in place, but make improvements to it. She said, Bolling said that he spoke about their plans with Trump on more than one occasion and in person. And he said, quote, specifically the idea of excusing debt and giving away, as Trump says, free stuff, is becoming more and more popular among younger voters. And that's true because we have finally realized how much we were really screwed. Now, again, growing up, all we heard was you go to college, you're going to get a good job. You go to college, you take out a whole bunch of money, but don't worry, you'll be able to pay it back in no time because you'll get these jobs with 6 figures and you will be incredibly successful. So just go to college and you will be smart and you will make lots of money. Now, obviously, that's not real at all. And look, we were growing up. We should have been more skeptical of it, perhaps. Then again, when you're 18 and you're able to take out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at a time in order to pay for schooling, I mean, look, when you're young, you tend to make some not good financial decisions, and then you end up learning from it. But the thing about this is this student loan debt, and it's roughly about 30 to 40,000 is the average, right? But some can go as high as $150,000, $200,000. Well, that's a lot of money, and it can take a lifetime to pay back, especially if the jobs that you were going for don't exist or end up not being as easy to get into. So there is that situation. So when you talk about debt forgiveness to those students, yeah, it is really popular. It is. So now it's not just about debt cancellation for student loan borrowers. There's also a lot of different issues that Bernie Sanders talks about and has a remedy for. For example, massive wealth and income inequality. No, Elizabeth Warren herself has a wealth tax, and I think that's a great idea. And you also have a lot of these plans. Again, Green New Deal, jobs just, basically economic justice plans from both of those candidates in order to address that wealth and income inequality. You also have the massive student loan debt, as I mentioned, medical debt. Now, that's also important, right? Because, again, medical debt is a thing that shouldn't exist. It only exists here. It doesn't exist in other countries. And there's a lot of people that are suffering from that. Also, people that can't afford to get health insurance that's affordable. People that die because they can't afford their medications because it's so expensive, even with insurance at some points. And so you have all these different problems, right? And a lot of those problems are facing younger people, millennials. Look, we're in our 30s now. And so we're not just some, kids that are fresh out of college. No, we've been in the real world and it kind of sucks. And so we also have access to the internet. We have the access to facts. And so we can look at all these issues that exist here in America that don't exist as much in other places. So we can look at other countries like Canada that has, a single payer healthcare, right? We can look at the UK that has a nationalized health service. And we can listen to people like Bernie Sanders online. And we can look up the facts and we can look at the studies. And it makes us think, wait, what allows those other countries to do those things, to be able to have those things while we can't? Now, the truth is we can do these things. And we can do them better, I think, than anyone else. You know why? Because we're freaking America. Just go ahead and tell us we can't do something. And we'll do it better than anyone else. Guaranteed. But unfortunately, our politicians, both right and left, keep telling us, oh, no, we can't do that. We can't do any of this stuff. Oh, no, we can't do better than Canada. We can't do better than the UK. We can't do better than these Nordic countries. No, we can't do that because we got to get all the tax cuts to the rich. The rich are supposed to have everything, and you can't have. That's why you can't have nice things. Well, screw that. Screw that. Now, Bowling, he did mention that these, a little bit of a walk back. He said, look, Trump talked to me about mid-2019, but, quote, I feel it was more of an observation than a re-election concern of the president. I feel the discussion was more of a tamping down of expectations than any serious concern about winning re-election in 2020. It's politics. Just look to Joe Biden, who recently suggested Iowa isn't a must-win state. Well, look, Bowling, no respect here, but Joe Biden says a lot of stupid things. So let's be honest. I mean, he is incredibly gaffe prone. But no, what Trump did is he actually made one of the most politically astute observations since 2016. Which, by the way, 2016, he used a similar kind of populism in order to beat Hillary Clinton. Now, she got beaten in these battleground states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. She got more votes, the Electoral College. We all know that, right? But part of that he was able to appeal to people, yes, there was blatant racism, and that was a major factor. Also, Hillary's unlikability, but also some of this populism as well. And so I wouldn't discount the role of fake populism as it is. If it's one thing that Donald Trump knows, it's how to appeal to people. He did it with the racists, obviously. He did it with the brick throwers, people that were tired of the establishment and the status quo, who have now, by the way, abandoned him. And he does it with his fans. Again, it's because that's the only skill that he has, is to be able to shamelessly lie to people and tell them what they want to hear. This is why, over the last year, the president, his campaign, the Republican National Committee, and others have screamed and whined about socialism. Now, look, this is something they've done for a long time, true. But now it's getting to a fevered pitch because now they have somebody that they can actually point to and say, oh, look, Democratic Socialist. But here's the thing. That's why Bernie Sanders is going to win. Because once people realize, and they're starting to, that kind of these kind of policies that are being derided as socialist are actually incredibly popular, that they actually agree with. Over 67% of Americans favor a single-payer Medicare for all. Now, for debt cancellation, we're not quite there yet, right? But for a student debt plan like Elizabeth Warren's, 57% of Americans actually support that. So total student debt forgiveness has a little bit of ways to go in the polling. And I think in order to get it to a better position, you actually have to explain the economic benefits of that student debt cancellation, but it's very popular among young people, right? I'm totally in favor of it because of those economic benefits. But all of this, plus Bernie Sanders and his dedicated base, great polling numbers versus Donald Trump, and his ability to appeal both to independent and Republican voters, as well as with a large majority of Democrats, that's hard to beat. That's really hard to beat. Trump himself has been impressed by Sanders' ability to fire up his base, take in small dollar donations, and attract big crowds, though not, in the president's words, as good as Trump. Because, of course, it is Donald Trump, and he has to say that. He gets good crowds, but not as good as Donald Trump. Yeah, okay. So what I get from this is he is deeply worried. He is very concerned. Make no mistake, Donald Trump fears Bernie Sanders because Trump knows, as dumb as he is, he can read a poll. As dumb as he is, he can read people, right? And he knows that Bernie Sanders is one of the only that can not only just beat him, but absolutely annihilate him at the polls. He knows. He knows. And he will if Bernie Sanders becomes the nominee. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.